Hey everyone, I'm Liz and today I'm going to show you how I made this realistic crochet skeleton doll. In part 1 I showed you how to make the skull. In part 2 I showed you how to make the spine and arms. Now I'm going to show you how to make the legs and chest. If you missed the first part of this tutorial, you can find the links to those tutorials in the description below, or click the link at the end of this video. Or if you'd like a written version of this doll, I've made a pattern available in my Ravelry store, which can be found in the description below. So I'm just going to continue where I left off in part 2. First I'm going to make the legs. This is going to be kind of similar to what I did to make the arms, but instead of the shoulder blade, I'm going to start by making the hip bone. I've begun the same way I did for the arms, with a magic circle with 6 stitches of single crochet. And just like with the arms, I closed my magic circle over the wire of the legs so that I could work around the wire. If you're making your doll without the wire layer, just sew the hip bone to the spine at the same spot, at the last black line of the spine. And also, just like the arms, I've sewn the middle of the magic circle to the spine so that it doesn't slip out of place on the wire. I'm going to sew the hip bone in place more when I finish, to make it more secure, and to attach the side of the hip bone lower down the spine. But I'll do that when I'm done making the leg. Now I'm going to increase every stitch of the row, so single crochet twice into each stitch. Alright, I finished my row of increase. Next I'm going to single crochet in each stitch for 4 more rows. So I've gotten to the end of 4 more rows of single crochet. Now I'm going to skip the first 6 stitches of the row and single crochet into the next 6 stitches of the row. And now I'm going to fold the top of the hip bone in half the same way I did with the shoulder blades when I was making the arms. Next I'm going to increase every stitch of the row again. Alright, I finished with my row of increase. Next I'm going to increase for another row, this time every second stitch. So single crochet into the next stitch, and then into the next stitch increase. I'm going to continue to do that into the rest of the row, and on my last stitch of this row I'm going to once again change colors to black. Alright, I've finished my next row of increase and I've changed colors to black. Next I'm going to single crochet into the first 3 stitches of the row. Then I'm going to skip the next 12 stitches of the row and single crochet into the last 3 stitches of the row. And on the last stitch of this row, I'm going to change colors back to white. Alright, next I'm going to single crochet into each stitch for 1 row. So I've gotten to the end of my row of single crochet. Now I'm going to once again increase every stitch of the row. So now I've gotten to the end of my row of increase. I'm going to increase again in this next row, but this time I'm going to increase the first 3 stitches of the row, then single crochet into the next 3 stitches, Then once again increase the next 3 stitches. And then single crochet into the last 3 stitches of the row. Now in this next row, I'm going to decrease 6 times into the first stitches of the row. So pull a loop through the next 2 stitches, and single crochet to decrease. Then I'm going to do that 5 more times. Okay, I've done all 6 decreases. Now I'm going to single crochet into the last 6 stitches of the row. In this next row I'm going to decrease again, but this time I'm just going to do 3 decreases before I single crochet into the last 6 stitches of the row. And in this row I'm going to do the same thing. Decrease 3, and then single crochet into the last 3 stitches of the row. Okay, I've done my last row of decrease. Now I'm going to add a bit of fiber fill to the top of the leg bone. And then I'm going to single crochet into each stitch for 4 rows. The rest of the leg is pretty much the same thing I did to end the arm. First I'm going to do 1 row of increase, then 1 row of decrease. So I'm going to increase in the next 2 stitches. Then single crochet 1 in the next stitch, and then increase again in the next 2 stitches, and single crochet in the last stitch of the row. And I'm going to decrease in the same way, but at the end of the row I'm going to change colors to black. So decrease 2 times, single crochet in the next stitch, decrease 2 more times, and then single crochet in the last stitch and change colors. Next I'm going to single crochet into each stitch, and on the last stitch of the row I'm going to change colors back to white. Now I'm going to do the lower leg in exactly the same way I did the forearm. I'm going to single crochet into the first stitch of the previous row, then chain 10. And just like with the arm, if you aren't using wire, you can just single crochet into the 3rd chain from the hook and into the rest of the chains. But if you are using wire, single crochet around the wire into the 3rd chain from the hook and into the remaining chains. And on the last single crochet I'm going to change colors to black. Now I'm going to do a decrease into the next 2 stitches of the previous row. Then single crochet into the next stitch and change colors to white. Chain 10, slip stitch into the 3rd chain from the hook and into the remaining chains. And for my last slip stitch I'm going to change colors to black. Then I'm going to decrease the next 2 stitches of the previous row, and then slip stitch to the first stitch of the row. Then I'm going to cut off my yarn and sew in these ends. Next I need to make the foot. I'm going to begin the same way I made the hand, by pulling up a loop into the left corner of one of the lower leg bones that I just made, and chain 1 for the first stitch. Then increase into the right corner of the other leg bone and make sure none of them is twisted. Single crochet into the left corner of the same bone, and then increase into the right corner of the bone that I started on, and change colors to white on the last stitch. Now I'm going to make the foot bigger the same way I did the hand. I'm going to increase the first 2 stitches of the row. Then single crochet into the next stitch, increase again into the next 2 stitches, and then single crochet into the last stitch. Next I'm going to single crochet into each stitch for 2 rows, and at the end of the second row I'm going to change colors to black. Alright, I finished 2 rows and changed colors to black. Now I'm going to single crochet in each stitch for another row and then change colors to white. Okay, I've changed colors back to white. Now I'm going to single crochet in each stitch for another 2 rows to end the foot. And now I'm going to slip stitch to the first stitch of the row, and I'm going to cut off my yarn. And then I'm going to sew in my end. Now that I've finished the leg, I'm going to sew the hip bone more securely to the spine. So I'm going to make sure the folded top of the hip is facing in the right direction towards the side of the body. I also want to make sure the leg is facing the right way up so that the lower leg bones are on either side, with a gap in the middle. First I'm going to sew all the way around the base of the leg, and then I'm going to sew about a ½ inch down the side of the hip bone to the spine. Next I'm going to add a bit of fiber fill to the foot. I'm going to add a bit more fiber fill to the bottom of the foot where the heel would go so that I can shape the foot. I'm going to make the toes the same way I made the fingers, except I'm just going to chain 2 instead of 4. And I'm going to slip stitch to the side that I want the toes to curl toward, which is going to be the bottom side of the foot. I'm also going to make all the toes the same size, and I'm going to place all 5 at the top of the foot. Next I'm going to make the kneecaps. This is really easy. I'm just going to make a magic circle with 6 stitches of single crochet and slip stitch to the first stitch to end the circle. And I'm going to use the tail to sew the kneecap to the front of the knee. And then I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side to make another leg. Then I'm going to sew the middle of the hip bones together. The last part I need to make is the chest. I'm going to start with the collarbone. Using my white yarn, I'm going to pull up a loop at the front of the spine at the 3rd black line in between the arms. I'm going to start on the right side. Then I'm going to chain 8, And I'm going to slip stitch to the left side of the third black line at the front of the spine. Then I'm going to slip stitch into each of the chains that I just made. And then I'm going to slip stitch back into the side of the spine in the same place where I started. Then I'm going to cut off my yarn and sew in the ends. Next I'm going to attach the shoulders to the loop that I just made. I'm going to start by pulling up a loop at the corner of the folded part of the shoulder. Now I'm going to seal this hole in the shoulder blade by single crocheting through both sides of the shoulder blade. So I'm going to chain 1, then single crochet into the next 3 stitches of the shoulder blade. Then I'm going to single crochet 3 stitches along the side of the shoulder along this black line. And then I'm going to double crochet into the same area as the last single crochet that I made at the side of the shoulder. Then I'm going to chain 2, and then slip stitch into the bottom of the circle that I just made between the arms. Then I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to slip stitch into the stitches I just made until I get back to the back of the shoulder blade. Okay, I've gotten to the back of the shoulder. Now I'm going to cut off my yarn and sew in the ends. Then I'm going to sew this part that I just made to the front of the shoulder blade. And now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And finally, I'm going to finish by making the rib cages using tall stitches. To make tall stitches, I'm going to yarn over the hook multiple times depending on the length of the stitch to make a really long stitch. So I'm going to pull up a loop into the bottom stitch of the collarbone and chain 1. And now to make the ribs, I'm going to make a row of tall stitches into the side of the spine. I need to make 10 attached ribs, so I'm going to make 10 tall stitches. For my first rib, I'm going to yarn over 7 times. Then I'm going to insert my hook into the top white line of the spine under the shoulders. And pull up a loop. Then I'm going to pull through the loops on my hook 2 at a time until I finish the stitch. And I'm going to do that for each stitch of the rib cage, but I'm going to yarn over a different amount of times for each stitch. So for the next stitch, I'm going to yarn over 7 times again, and pull up a loop in the next row of the spine. Then finish the stitch by pulling a loop through 2 loops at a time. For the third rib, I'm going to yarn over 8 times before I pull up a loop in the next row of the spine. Then finish the stitch. And do the same for the fourth rib, yarn over 8. And pull up a loop in the next row of the spine. Now for the next 2 ribs, I'm going to yarn over 9. And for the next rib, I'm going to yarn over 10. I'm going to yarn over 11 times for the 8th rib. And for the 9th rib, I'm going to yarn over 10 times again. Before I make the last rib, I'm going to slip stitch into the next 2 loops of the post of the stitch I just made. So that would be this loop and the next loop. And for the last rib, I'm going to yarn over 8 times. Now to end the ribs on this side, I'm going to slip stitch into the next loop of the post of this stitch. Then I'm going to cut off my yarn and sew in my ends. If you want, you could leave it like this and just do the other side, but if you want a more realistic look, you could create 2 more unattached ribs. I'm going to do this in pretty much the same way I did the fingers. Using my white yarn, I'm going to make a slip knot and chain 8. And just like with the fingers, I'm going to chain around the tail end. So chain 1 around the side of the tail end, and then the other, until I've chained 8. Then I'm going to slip stitch into the next row of the spine, and just like with the fingers, I'm going to work on the side I want the ribs to curl toward. Then I'm going to cut off my yarn and sew in the ends. And for the last rib, I'm going to do pretty much the same thing, but this time I'm going to chain 6 instead of 8. And now I just need to do the same thing on the other side to make the rest of the ribs. Alright, I finished with both sides of the ribs. Now I'm going to sew the 2 sides together at the tops of the first 6 ribs. Now the doll's body is complete. If you want, you can use crochet thread or embroidery floss to add lines to the feet, or you could just leave it as it is. If you missed the first part of this tutorial, you can find it by clicking the link in the description. You can also find the written pattern in my Ravelry store. That link is also in the description below. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, give it a like or share it on social media. If you want to help support me in making new videos, donate to my Patreon. It's entirely optional, but if you do, you can get some perks like having access to my videos a week before they're posted here on YouTube. You can find more information about that in the description below. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, subscribe to my channel and I'll see you all next time. Bye!